We're floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. Hi, welcome to the Wingmen Show. My name is Drew Brown. We hope to inspire, entertain, and learn something so we can all make this world a better place for our children. I'd like to introduce to you somebody who's my friend, my wingman, my main man, and I have a wingman watching my back, Dr. Paul Thompson. Hey, Paul, what's happening?
Oh, not much. Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Thompson, and you just heard from Mr. Drew Brown, Dark Gable. He's the American dream. He's the man, the myth, the legend, the pilot's pilot, the role model's role model, and most importantly, his royal fullness. How are you doing today, Mr. Dark Gable?
I'm doing great, and I'm glad I'm full of knowledge, Paul. I'm glad I'm full of knowledge. Well, we're going to have a great show right now. Check this out. Paul, Dr. Paul, what's up, my brother? I got something to tell you about our wingman story.
Well, I'm excited to hear it. I'm sure it's something dynamic and exciting, and the audience will just love it.
And I'm going to ask you a question. What's the only animal in the world that will stalk a man? The answer is a polar bear. And the wingman story, I have to tell you, has to do with an encounter with the only animal that actually will stalk a man to eat.
Let me see. Is it a crocodile?
No, it's not a crocodile.
Oh, okay.
It's a very, very courageous young man. And he has a story that it's going to blow your mind. Well, actually, you're going to tell it, so you already know. Let's start this off by this. Yesterday, I went to BJ's. I don't know if you know BJ's like Costco. Yeah. I actually am with both of them. I love Costco, but it's a little far away. And I went to go get something, and there was nobody in the store, but there was a young black man there he was 19 or 20 years old. And he gave me the little spiel about AT&T. Hi, would you like to? And I stopped and I said, I can't use AT&T. Where I live, it doesn't really cover it very well. Anyway, I right then and there, and you know how I am, Dr. Paul, I stopped. I had a mission right there. What the hell are you doing here? You know, what school did you go to? I always start off like that. And then they say, oh, I finished. I said, no, what college, what 4-year degree do you have? Oh, I didn't. I took some time. And I took responsibility. I'm not going to go into what I say, but you know what I say. Point being, I took responsibility right then and there as a role model, a real role model, because I'm not LeBron James. You're not LeBron James. We have our own talent, but our talent is learned through education. This is real important. Anyway, as a real role model, I explained to him that he doesn't have a choice about getting an education unless he wants to work at BJ's for the rest of his life. Nothing wrong with working at BJ's, but he's a young, smart man who could go to I told him I went to Southern University of New Orleans, a black college. And I said, young man, I had more fun than you'll ever have, ever here working here. And this is not putting down people who work at any of those places. I'm talking, I took responsibility with a man who had a better future. You know, they're making a lot of laws hard for people to vote. How about we as a people, and I don't mean people as dark skinned, we as the good people go and find other people and get them registered to vote and get them IDs. Man, forget these idiots. We need to take responsibility, each one of us, just with one person. You know, we can actually change the world. But last thing, I'm sorry, Paul, but you sometimes send me things of people doing horrendous things in just the public walking by and not doing anything about it. You know, we get what we deserve. Unless you get involved, then you're part of the problem. That was my little spiel for today. What do you think, Doctor?
Well, you're right. You're right. Obviously, you're a motivator. And I know I can kind of visualize the kind of guy you're talking about, because usually folks are selling the phone stuff when you walk into Sam's, something like that. They're pretty sharp. In fact, the last 2 phones upgrades we got were from the same thing. You walk in, the guys are real sharp. And now the guy, last time we got a phone, which is about a couple of years ago, this guy I forgot what school he was going to. He was finishing up at Georgia Tech. That's right. I forgot what he was majoring in. It was in something something scientific. And he was just doing that and doing a good job and configuring our phones. And he was doing like 6 things at once. So he was, I just saw him there that one time. Then I had a problem the next day. He went and solved it. Then I never saw him again. He's not there. But the key is if you start off small and you build yourself, that's okay. You don't have to stay in the same position all the time. You have to have ambition to go out and do more. And that requires effort. That requires effort and time and study, and hopefully in something that you like. So in terms of a college education and vocational education, I like them both. I don't see why you can't do both. There's no reason.
There's nothing wrong with being a plumber as long as you do it because it's your choice, not because that's the only route you can take. And one other thing I told this kid that was real important, Doc, I said, I'm not better than you. My kids are not better than you. I didn't have a choice. The only reason you're sitting here selling phones is because you had a choice. If you were my kid, you'd be in school right now. So I don't want you to blame yourself like you were, like I was walking around motivated in high school. Hey, I'm going to college. I went to college like most people go from junior high to high school. It was expected of me. I did it. So that was real important to convey to him that I wasn't a real smart kid. And, I wasn't any different than he was or you. I mean, that was just expected of us. And we did what was expected.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, you know where we live right now, right?
In the Atlanta
area. We live in the World Series capital right now. Now, I'm a Yankee fan, 100%. Let me put that on the screen, whatever you need to say. I'm 100% Yankee fan. But in my world, what's wrong with having number 2? And number 2 is wherever I live, and I'm an Atlanta Brave fan. And especially, it was so much fun watching that World Series. That World Series was the bomb, wasn't it, Paul?
It was. It's good that the pitcher didn't get his foot broken.
Wow, yeah, when the guy stepped on it.
Yeah, he stepped on it and hit the base at the guy's foot. That's a good move to disable somebody, actually.
They did that to Jackie Robinson, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
A lot. They used to spike him. And then the people finally said, leave that brother alone. Every time you do something to him, he hits a double or he steals a base. Just leave him alone. Don't say nothing to him. Don't call him anything. Mm-hmm. But what I really wanted to say about that World Series that was the bomb was that home run. The guy who won the MVP, he smacked that home run out of the stadium. And that brings me to something important, and that's Hank Aaron. This is where he was. This is where he was great. And I had the ability to actually be with him. And my son met him, and I'll put some pictures up of us being with him. But to me, and this is the point, to me, he is the home run king because without steroids, these guys wouldn't have hit those home runs. Now, let me explain to you why I'm so against steroids. So against steroids. When Joe Louis fought Max Schmeling, if Max Schmeling was on steroids and would have beaten Joe Louis, if those runners in Germany, those white sprinters would have beat Jesse Owens, history would have been changed because of cheating. This was natural, one-on-one. Whatever shorty gave you, you have. Do the best you can with it. Now, on the other hand, so I do not believe in the steroid era at all. But on the other hand, I had to go a little deeper. And I'll end this little rant with this. I talked to Willie Mays once, and he said very clear, he was older. People are making more now in an inning, damn it, than Willie Mays made in a year. So It's really strange. But you know what the man told me? He said, let me tell you something, son, I'd have done anything in the world to play good baseball. I'd have taken anything. I'd have done anything in the world. That really set me back. These guys are struggling for their careers, and they're struggling against people who are actually taking steroids, and it's not fair. But anyway, Hank Aaron.
Yeah, Hank Aaron was quite a man, a class act. I remember when he was approaching, near breaking Babe Ruth's record and all the death threats he got, which is, I guess, kind of the standard thing, to the point that he had special protection. The whole team was under threat, but that craziness is there. That seems like 1,000 years ago, but no, it wasn't 1,000 years ago. I was working at Macy's at the time, We've seen a lot in our lifetime. But one thing about Hank Aaron, there's a famous quote by Muhammad Ali, your friend Muhammad Ali, who said, "Hank Aaron is the only man I admire more than myself."
Wow.
Quote unquote.
That's pretty deep. Well, this city is popping with this World Series, and it was so exciting to watch baseball rooting for a team. You know what else happened this not too long ago, this past weekend? Remember when Southwest canceled all their flights?
Yes.
Well, guess what? American Airlines canceled over 1,700 flights because of work shortages of people. Once again, they blamed it on the weather and something else.
Right.
But the truth was, one of the flight attendants actually got punched in the face, received broken bones in her face by a first-class passenger. And the flight attendants of American Airlines, I believe, had just said, we've had enough. Something has to be done. What do you think about that, Dr. Paul, if you were the pilot on that one, Captain?
Well, if you're the captain, you can't leave the cockpit. Everybody's really in great danger, and they're in a lot of danger. One thing, the Federal Air Marshal Service does have training for flight attendants and all air crews. It's a little hand-to-hand deal, and it's kind of nice. You go and they give you a certificate, and they're nice people. But combat in that environment is very, very difficult, even for a trained person. One of the realities is that in any kind of training you're getting, and I know they're doing the best they can, you're in some dojo or a mat, you got a lot of space. When you go into an airplane, you can barely sit down in the seat. It's hard to even get up. You can't be Bruce Lee. There's no round kicks and all. No, everything is straight, small, quick. And there are things you can do, but it takes a lot of training to do that. So now all of a sudden you've got people, most of them are female, smaller people, and they got to literally turn into Bruce Lee to overcome anybody, same size, bigger, different sex. I guess what the guy bumped into or something. A lot of times it's the first class passengers, not always the people who can't afford the big seats. I was told by a couple of flight attendants who retired, they flew for like 35 years, and said their biggest problems were in first class, and it was always alcohol. And they were with professionals,
what?
Doctors.
Are you kidding me?
Surgeons. There's one out. I'll just tell you, there's one case. I saw it in the news. What about 20 years ago or so, where there was some surgeon coming back to Atlanta on a Delta flight, didn't like something going on. He was drunk, some big time surgeon. I know your son's a surgeon. He would never do this.
No.
And he doesn't. He's so.
Don't use that N word, though. Don't say never. We don't use that N word around this country.
Okay. All right. Well, you do something. He gets up. He dislikes something that went on in the first class service. He goes to the food cart, the food tray, big food cart. They got all the carts. He gets up, pulls his pants down, and defecates on the thing.
Come on, there. Paul.
Face. After that, I'm going to put it on there. After that, and this wasn't in Chicago. After that, he hits one of the flight attendants. Well, this flight attendant knew how to hit back. Long story short, she tore him up. This is a long time ago. I don't think she went to the FAMS training, the Air Marshal training. I think she had a lot of street training. And she tore this guy up. He got beat up badly, apparently.
Did she push his face back in his defecation?
I don't know. I didn't hear that.
Let's make believe.
I think his head contacted the cart. He got torn up by someone who's big and strong and female and tore him up. And nothing happened to her. That's an exception. But you shouldn't have to deal with it. But people are so crazy. They take their craziness, they take it on airplanes. As far as the cockpit people, they can't come back anyway. So think about it. That would be the perfect setup for a hijacking. You get them to open, what's going on? Boom, 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 boom. I'm up there. That's why they defend the door.
They used to come out of the cockpit when it was normal. I mean, back in the day, I hate to say that. I always sound like my parents when I say back in the day. But Paul, you said the answer. We know the answer. What if they actually didn't sell whiskey up there? And whiskey, I mean hard liquor, hard lemonade, wine, Merlot, whatever you want to call whiskey. Do you realize that that's an income for them? And actually in first class, they don't pay for it. I think there's a lot less in economy because it's like $7, $8, $9 for some whiskey now.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. They have a lot there, but see people like you. So you got these like super platinum, triple digit, whatever credit cards that get you into these sky lounges, and you can get plastered before you get on the airplane. Now, if you don't have the big sky money lounge money, you can still get stuff around. So sometimes they're messed up. So don't serve it at the airports.
When you're plastered, you shouldn't be allowed on the plane.
True.
There's no hiding plastered. Okay, that's not like you're plastered, but you act straight because that means you're not plastered.
Okay, well they may be half plastered, and then the partial pressure of the atmosphere at cabin altitude may bring out the craziness. I don't know. I just made that up, but it might be true.
Well, you made up something that has to do with a very deadly disease. It's called alcoholism, and it's just not true. How about this one, if you think that that's crazy? This is a very sad story, and I don't bring sad stories, but it's ironic. There was a football player, which, you know what, can remain nameless because it really doesn't have anything to do with him. But anyway, he's a superstar in college, and his best friend was killed in a DUI accident. His best friend was drunk or something, and he got killed in a DUI. But he was so tight with him, his number was 3. His best friend's number was 3. And every time this guy ran a touchdown, he held up 3 fingers. It was very enlightening. It was like, in memory of him. Well, that same person just killed somebody because he was under the influence. He wasn't that hurt, but his car killed another person, and he's now going to go to jail from 2 to 20 years without probation. And once again, we make fun of it sometimes. It's ha-ha sometimes. But alcoholism and whiskey is a serious, serious problem. And most of these events that escalate beyond normalcy are because they are fueled with whiskey. Once again, whiskey, Merlot, Cherlot, or Perlot. I believe that that's one of the problems. That's a sad story, isn't it, Dr. Thompson?
Yeah, I heard about it. It was in Las Vegas, the city of Las Vegas, and his car got up to 156 miles an hour, and he actually impacted the young lady at 127 on a residential street, wasn't even on a highway. Having too much too soon. It's going to be tough on him. He's a famous athlete. I think he's 22 years old. No previous run-ins with the law or anything like that. But the optics look very, very, very bad for him. Probably made one mistake. And that might be, being young and just having too much too soon. That could happen at any age. You could be 87. But it just looks really, really bad. It's sad for everybody. And that shows how vulnerable we all are. Even if you're a good defensive driver, it's somebody else. I've been in, 3 car wrecks? I got to think. Yeah, 2 car wrecks and 1 inconvenient collision. And each time, the only thing I could have done different on all 3 was not to just have not been there.
No, I mean, sometimes it's not your fault.
No.
But we're talking about something that's actually a very deadly disease. And we kind of pass over it because I guess we don't want to talk about, we don't want to talk about mental illness a lot. It's just something that we don't have enough knowledge about to talk about. But the ironic part of this is that he might, and which scares me to death, you can black out, which I know, but you can black out if you drink too much whiskey, not meaning that you don't remember what you did. And could you imagine going to jail, blacking out, going to jail for 2 to 20 years and not remembering at least what you did? That's horrible. But I got good news.
What's that?
Because it started going, woo. Great. Well, I don't know. Good news. Incredible stuff. There's this jazz guitarist. His name was Pat Martino. He was a jazz guitarist, famous jazz guitarist. Anyway, he was unfortunate. He had brain surgery, and he lost his entire memory. Dr. Paul Thompson, this man, from losing his entire memory, didn't know how to play guitar whatsoever, relearned how to play jazz guitar and lived for another 30 years playing professional jazz guitar, and he just physically passed away. I think that's one of the most incredible things you can ever do, because a lot of us don't even want to learn like a new little computer technique when we're 40 or 30. It's like, nah, it's too much. We'll do it the old way. What do you think, Dr. Thompson?
Yeah, I heard about that. I think he was having some kind of brain surgery. He had some kind of growth on his brain. They did some surgery and cut something, and he lost that memory, but regained it back, I guess, through trial and error, and I guess just came back. But he had to have a lot of motivation. I read articles on that. You can regain a lot of things after brain surgery, but to lose it all and get it back is really tough and usually highly unusual.
It takes something that, I used to do this when I spoke, but I'm going to curse real bad on the show now. Those two words are hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, which is a dirty word to some people, because you know what? I have a Wingman PSA very seriously. Nothing, I said nothing in the world that's free is worth anything. If it's free, it's worth free. There are no deals. In this world, you get what you pay for. The sooner you learn it, the better off you are. It took me many, many trials to learn about this PSA, but nothing is free. Thank you. This has been a Wingmen Show PSA.
Thank you for that. You need to have skin in the game.
Without a doubt. And, when we talk about this when you talk about your Wingman story, it seems like the tougher road you have, the better off it becomes. A lot of people come from very successful families and they have a hard time becoming successful on their own. And they don't feel good for a very long time. And it's all about how you feel, but there's nothing in the world that comes free. It just doesn't, for $29.95, I'll teach you how to make $500,000 a week. Well, if you know how to make $500,000 a week, you're not selling it to me for $29.95. Just doesn't make sense.
Right.
Paul, you and I, both Navy jet carrier pilots, did something that was probably worse than going into combat, and that was night flying on the carrier at night in any weather, no matter what. You, I'm sorry to say, only had one engine with that beautiful jet behind you. I at least had two. That doesn't matter. The matter is it's the scariest shit I ever did in my entire life. So we did something called Last Night Tankers, because not only did we carry weapons, as you can see behind you, and so we learned how to shoot guns, shoot rockets, drop a lot of bombs, but we also could carry fuel tanks. And that means we would be the last jet up there. That means if we didn't make it back, there was nobody to give us any gas. Paul, can you tell me a little bit about your night tanker experience?
Yeah, I typically enjoyed it because there's really nothing much to do. The person that has the biggest challenge is the person receiving fuel. The way the Air Force does it is the airplane that needs the gas gets in a position, flies a certain formation, and there's a boom operator that sticks it in there. Okay. And the Navy system is very different. It's called the hose and drogue system. And it's a big basket that just sits out there and you plug into it. And sometimes if the tanker pilot's not so good, it's very difficult. That basket can sometimes move around like someone faking a jump shot or something. And you've got to kind of figure out what's going on. But typically it's not that big a deal. At night it's a little more challenging. I did see something one time that was very unusual at night. I was a night tanker. I remember it was a beautiful night. And this is really a thing about perception and having what they call that spidey sense, that sixth sense that something's not quite right or something significant happened. You see it. I'm not sure, but there's something to that. I don't think it was my imagination. And I remember it was one night, I was overhead the ship like 10,000 feet high, clear night, I could see the moon. I'd look down the ship a little bit. Somebody's tanking, and they come, they go, they come, they go, they come, they go. It's actually quite boring. And I remember looking down, and all of a sudden, I just saw this bright flash for like half of a second, but it was super bright, right where the ship was. It was there, it was gone, and the ship was there. I said, did I see that? I think I did. And it was like, if you remember those old Kodak cameras, before we had iPhones and all that stuff, Old
Sure.
Kodak cameras, old flash cubes.
Yes.
They were bright and they
Poof.
flashed on all sides, so everybody get blinded.
Yes.
They're just flash cubes. So it's like
Bubble
one of
all,
those.
they bubble all up. Remember that?
Yeah, they bubble up and you have to throw it away after it's done. They just kind of explode. This thing kind of exploded for half a second. I was like, yeah. Then I'm on the radio. Nobody's saying anything. It's quiet. So I'm the last one. So it's like maybe 45 minutes later, I come and I land, and everybody is quiet. The whole show, everyone's quiet. They're quiet and they're walking with their heads bowed. No one's saying anything. That's very unusual. Usually it's very loud in the passageways. And as I get in, I'm taking my flight gear off. The captain comes on the 1MC, which was a speaker system throughout the entire aircraft carrier. And he was talking about the squadron, we had a bad accident. And what happened was a plane crashed that night. Basically, that flash was an A6 that landed a little too far right, collided with some other airplanes, hurt some people working on those airplanes badly. That airplane went off the end of the ship. I think they lost a wing, went into the water, and both of them were killed. I think one was the commanding officer of the squadron.
Wow.
And they never recovered the airplane or the bodies. And it's funny, not funny, but I had a sense of something dynamic and happened in that second when I was overhead at 10,000 feet. When I came down, found out what it was. I didn't see it. There's no pictures of it, but I sensed that something bad had happened, but wondering if it was my imagination, but knowing that it wasn't. And I found out that I was right, sadly. It's a dangerous environment.
Oh, yes, the most dangerous job in the world.
Yeah, it's very dangerous, but enjoyable.
Well, that story was incredible. I think I'm going to save my night tanker story for another show, because there's something that's really interesting that I really want you to talk about. But during one of my deployments, we went to Palma de Mallorca, which is in Spain, which is an island off of Spain. Anyway, and that's where pearls came from. And I got my wife some pearls, and it was just a great time to be there. We went to a club, though, and we got to talking to some people, and we went outside the club where you could actually hear, and there were some black people there, and they were speaking with an English accent. And Paul, I've been a lot of places in my life, but I haven't ever heard a black person talk with a pure English accent, to the point where I thought that they were fooling around. I was like, stop it. Don't talk like that anymore, because they were straight up black. Right. As you get older, knowledge is like light, Once you see more, you know more. And so I come to find out there are many black neighborhoods in London that are just as bad, if not worse, than any of our Baltimore, Harlem, New Orleans, any of those, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, whatever you want to call it. They got some badass places all over the world. But in London also, who actually are black. You have a Wingman story that once again proves how sometimes you take a negative, you make it a positive. And I really can't wait to hear this Wingman story from you. Take it away, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, you talk about England, and I had the same thing. I grew up with a family friend. My father's, one of his best friends, was actually a black Englishman living in New York, lived near us, and spoke stereotypically like Cary Grant. But that's the way they spoke. So I was kind of used to that with him, Joe. And he was outgoing. He was like you, but louder, actually. So, and he would get these debates with people, and they're kind of looking at him because they're not expecting this to come out of a guy that looks like this. And he could be in Buckingham Palace, and he's intense, and no, they didn't know what to do. And sometimes immigrants could use that to their advantage, because you're kind of like one of the shock troops. No one's really ready for it. But anyway, the story is about a guy named Dwayne Fields, and he comes from a very rough part of East London. I don't know London very well, but like you said, there are parts there where you don't really need to take the train. You don't need to really hang out there. Danger is danger. A lot of them are just as dangerous. Like you said, they may have better vocabulary. Some of them do. Some of the gangsters
kill you
have
properly.
That's fact. That's a fact. Some of the worst gangsters have very good vocabulary. You do need a thesaurus. Some of the, some of their
I have to
their dropouts
interject
are
it.
pretty good.
I have to interject this. I'm so sorry, Doc, but I spoke in the Bahamas once. They wanted to bring me in because of gang problems. And I'm not kidding. I met the gangs like in this room and they were like, hello, sir. How are you today? I hope you had a good flight over. I'm telling you, it started off like, what? You're the gangs?
What? Come on, quit playing around. Yeah, exactly. I understand. Quit playing around. I'm serious. I came over here to help you out. You know, you're not SNL on Saturday night. But anyway, you know, he's speaking. But anyway, this guy, the big thing about him was that he comes from a very, you know, apparently a broken family, a hard situation, came from Jamaica at the age of 6, living in a bad neighborhood, guns. Someone was almost killed him, but they didn't because the gun misfired. Stabbed a bunch of times before and after, decided to get out of that, got himself to school, wanted to do something different, sounds like you. And he ended up becoming an adventurer, an explorer. And he saw this ad for looking for people who wanted to go to Antarctica. So he volunteered for it. And I guess
he was in a university at that time.
Yeah, he's in London University, some university in London.
Very important point.
Yes, got himself to school. And he wanted to do something else. And so he signs up for this thing to go to Antarctica. And they say, well, he tried just a tryout. And he was kind of too late applying. He didn't go. But they were impressed with, I guess, his physicality and other things. They told him to try something else. So he signed up for an expedition. They were looking for people to go to the North Pole. And he signed up for that. And part of his motivation was to be like Matthew Henson, who was a black man, I think born in Maryland, but he accompanied so-called Commodore Perry to the North Pole. And some people argue who was the first one actually on the North Pole, was it Commodore Perry or Matthew Henson?
Who do you think was the first one to check out the dangerous? Hey, could you go up there and see how it is?
Yeah, who was actually, you know, got there first, you know, whatever difference it was. But that was after like 8 or 9 tries. So he said, I would be the first black Briton or black person from Britain to do this. And long story short, he did.
Right.
And he was the one at one point, excuse me, they were being tracked by a polar bear. He said it was about a half mile behind them, weaving left and right. And I guess they got away from it. But what he's done since that time was he's come back. He's like you. He's given motivational talks to youth who see no way out, who are in the same bad situations as folks in this country. And he said he's spoken to about 20,000 over the years. And now he's planning on taking a group to Antarctica. He wants to do that thing to Antarctica. He wants to take 16 kids aged between 16 and 19 to show them something different. And they're training for that right now. So that's someone that's giving back and giving forward at the same time.
That's wonderful.
Fields.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Dr. Paul. It's kind of, this show is great because we started off with the BJ story and helping a young black kid with being a wingman. And we end off with that. And it brings me to wanting to say something. You know this as a parent. Sometimes kids listen to people other than their parents a lot more than they listen to their parents. They'll listen to their parents, but they don't show like they're listening. So when you approach them, they're not like your kids. There's some other dynamic in that. True. And the answer to ever getting stalked by a polar bear is make sure you just hang out with a heavier person.
Yes.
Because I'm sure he's going for the fat one.
There you go.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time. And that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners, too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men and women.